Hi everyone, my name's Gabrielle Sambhi. I'm a law graduate and I'm currently working in the legal sector around conveyancing, doing my SILEX. My background is I'm mixed race. My mum is white English and my dad is Indian. He came over here in the 60s.
Hi guys, I'm Emma Sayers. I am 26 years old and I am a lecturer and researcher in mental health. And my background, I am mixed race. My dad is white English and my mum is from Zambia.
Hi, my name is Chiedza Ikpeh and I am 26 years old. I was born in Zimbabwe but raised in the city of Leeds. I am a secondary English teacher in the Northwest. I'm also a doctoral researcher, currently investigating issues surrounding social justice within the education system. On top of that, I am a co-founder of the Rara Education Project, which is very much focused on the representation, positive representation of Black Africans and Caribbeans within the context of Britain.
Okay, so let's talk about racism within the workplace. I know you guys have got some technical terms that we'll go through because is it micro and macro?
Yeah.
I've not, God, I'm going to sound ignorant, but I don't know what they mean. So it'd be great to talk about that. But for me personally, I've only really worked in two places that have like really affected me, and that's within the TV industry. And they have been really subtle racist remarks and stuff like that, but I've never had the confidence to speak out. So yeah, I'm glad you guys are doing this today.
Yeah.
So I think like you said, how you've experienced like subtle ones. It seems like more of like individually rather than the institutions themselves, a microaggression. So like people on a day-to-day basis, especially in the workplace, it could be like what they think is banter or colloquial language that they don't know is not right to use or politically correct.
So all their own ignorance, basically.
Yeah, everyone's running on their own ignorance. For example, ones that I face on a day-to-day basis where people come up to you and they're like, just been on holiday, like, oh look, I'm almost your colour now, and I'm just like, I'm not a colour. This is my complexion.
Yeah.
It's because of my ethnicity. It's something that I'm proud of. But if you start talking about all of that to them, they think that you're just crazy. Like they're just saying they got a tan, and it's little things like that come at you, and you don't know whether to say anything because it's so small. But it grinds on you when it's on a day-to-day basis, and that's what we kind of mean about microaggressions. Those things that's on a day-to-day basis, and it grinds on what you're doing.
Yeah. See, that's the problem with a microaggression because it keeps happening. It's the little things and you can't quite put a name on it. So if you were to say, oh, they're being racist or they're doing this, they would turn around and say, why are you being so over dramatic? Like, why are you blowing it completely out of proportion? I was only saying, and the problem with receiving those microaggressions every single day is that you start thinking, oh no, I'm being too dramatic. No, I won't say it this time. Maybe if it happens again. And you keep taking it and you're just absorbing just all of this on a daily basis to the point where you're thinking, am I going crazy? And I got to the point where I had to ask myself, like, am I just making stuff up? Like, am I just trying to play the race card? And it has you questioning yourself because there's all these little things that you can't quite name it. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's a really good point because I think that's kind of the harm of a microaggression is it seems so minuscule and just be like, I'll just bite it off or whatever. But essentially it's gaslighting. The fact you said, I thought I was going crazy, I thought I was seeing things, is literally somebody saying that how you're perceiving it is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you shouldn't be offended by this because I'm saying it's not offensive. Who are you to tell me if I'm offended by how you're treating me as a person?
That's it.
So I find it always frustrating with microaggressions because it's a hard thing to it's like this elusive thing that you can't quite grasp.
Yeah, it's not tangible.
It's not tangible, and that makes it really hard.
Would you say that comes from anyone, or do you ever feel like microaggression stems from a certain type of individual?
I do think it has a lot to do with your background, especially your socio-economic background. Apologies. And what I think it is a very big thing, and I think we spoke about this before, where if you've not grown up around a lot of people, around a lot of ethnic or Black and Asian people or other ethnic minorities, you are going to see things that might be new to you, and you haven't taken it upon yourself to educate yourself on those things. So you're going to comment because you don't know. And it's blatant ignorance, but it gets to a point where it's no longer ignorance, it becomes rude, and it's unacceptable. But I do think a lot of it, especially where in the workplaces where I've worked, it is because you've come from white middle class backgrounds, so you don't know that it's not okay. You think you're just commenting on something because it's new to you, such as hair, and I'm sure that's always come up, and the colour of your skin, or just the way you do things. Like I've heard people just making comments about, you know, people wearing like headscarves and turbans and stuff, and, you know, even though as a woman in the religion, I don't wear, in the culture, I don't wear a turban, but, you know, I know my family, people in my family do, so when I hear people making those comments to other people, like towel heads and things like that, you know, they just think it's banter, it's just a bit funny, but it's not, it's so hurtful. And I think what you were saying, like, it's the build-up, it's like, if you cut yourself slightly on your hand, you're all right, but then if you have like 500 cuts every day that keep going, you're in pain, you're bleeding out, and each microaggression that is just thrown at someone every day by 10, 100 different people, it's like just a wound, and you, because you can't do anything about it, it's like internally you're just breaking down constantly, and that's what needs to change in the workplace. The type of banter, the type of conversations you have, and the only way to do that is, I think, having these conversations with people, being able to be like, I don't like what you said there. And don't get me wrong, it's not always for the person who's been attacked to have to say something, because that's a lot to expect from someone. But if you do, I think that's the best way to try and get this across. And you might realise you have a conversation with someone and they might be like, I didn't even realise that was offensive. And you might have changed the way somebody thinks, and they might go home and change the way their family thinks if they're saying it. So it's just tackling those little comments at first that just grind on you on a day-to-day basis.
Going back to what you said though about lots of little cuts, I think it's a saying, isn't it? Death by 1,000 cuts or something like that. But I think it's so important to see it like that, where microaggressions continually cutting at a person, looking at the damage it's doing internally. Like, so if somebody's perpetually bleeding on the inside, like, scientifically speaking, medically speaking, that's like the person's dying. Do you know what I mean? And the reason I say that is that I see how my self-esteem was severely damaged as a consequence of being on the receiving end. In one of a previous role that I was in, being on the receiving end of all of that really put me down. And I'm not a quiet person, I'm not a shy person. And I saw myself, do you know what, I'm such an opinionated person, and I saw myself closing up, that if anyone that knows me saw me in that place of work, they'd be like, who's that? And it was just showing just the damage it was doing, because I kept feeling like, oh, it's just me. Oh, I'm just making it up. Oh, stop saying stuff like that. Why are you always looking for an opportunity to complain? And I kept like internalizing everything. And I'm just, just when you're saying like, just when you're taking them cuts all the time, it's so damaging.
And how long would you say you've dealt with that? Or when you was in that space where it really, really affected you, how long was the process to the point where you were just like, okay, I can't do this anymore?
Do you know what? I left uni 2016, 17, and I've experienced these kinds of challenges all the way through, sort of in between jobs. And those are some of the reasons why I left certain occupations. That's the reason why I even had a career change, because I thought maybe I'm just in the wrong industry. And it's literally up till this year, early this year, where I started to share some of the experiences I had in previous roles. And one of my mentors in an occupation that I was in said, you know what you experienced was absolutely inappropriate. If we had known that that was going on, we should have escalated that. And I feel like that was like a light bulb moment that, so it's absolutely inappropriate. And this was like a white man telling me that what I experienced was inappropriate. And I was like, so if they can see it, I'm not crazy. And from then on, like, I don't shut up about it anymore. Like, I go into the workplace and I'm so able to vocalize, call things out, even if someone doesn't think it's an issue, and see how they respond to that. I'm so ready to have the conversation now. But like, it was really closing me up for a long time.
I really resonate with that, actually. And I think about closing up, because I wouldn't say that I am a loud person or kind of like even outgoing person in most spaces, but I was seeing that even in workplaces, I was doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting how you're saying like how much it does hit your self-esteem, and then you kind of start thinking, you're like, you know, you hear like stats like it's harder for like either black women or to kind of get ahead in workplaces, they're not in like top positions. You think, well, is it, you know, discrimination as a whole, or is actually somebody's had their self-esteem battered for how many like years? It's really hard to actually even feel like you're capable of doing a job when every day you're being gaslighted and being like, am I even, like you're saying, it was only when they said, oh, that was completely wrong. You're like, oh, so it wasn't that whole sector that I was not doing well in. It was you lot.
Going off what you just said, sorry to interrupt. The amount of black women I've heard saying, oh, I didn't apply for that job because I didn't think I was competent. I didn't apply for that because I just didn't think I'd get it anyway. And it's like, well, why is that? Because you're continually having to internalize these ideas and these views about yourself. Again, it's damaging.
Just going off the back of that, I think when I coming out of uni, I've gone into the same industry, and everywhere I've worked, there has been 100% microaggression. It's not only that I've faced, but more of what I've witnessed. And a lot of that is towards black women, and you can just notice it. And I think I am a very vocal person. I think everywhere I've worked, I've said it straight away. Maybe not even in the most appropriate settings, like, you know, when you're supposed to maybe go speak to someone, a manager privately or something. I'd be like, no, why have you said that?
I love it.
I think there was one where this guy, I think he basically made a comment. This is where I used to work a few years ago, like, he was saying things like innate blood, and he was like, oh, you know, that using black language.
I hate that.
And then there's this girl next to me, and there's this black girl next to me, and she's, not surprisingly, she can speak perfectly good English. She speaks better than I did. Do you know what I mean? Like she was just looking like, I just heard her whisper to herself, black language. And I was like, right, what do you mean by that? I was like, do you mean urban? Like, you know, what do you mean? Black people can speak English, you know? Like, it's not a shock. Like, it was just little things like that. And you know what? It makes people really uncomfortable. It made people around me really uncomfortable. But I'd rather you all felt uncomfortable about what's going on than the one person that you don't even realise you're directing it at, because you're not on about them specifically, sits there and feels uncomfortable and says nothing.
I agree. I think more people should be like you, Gabby.
That's really
uncomfortable.
But it is, but sometimes if it's your boss or if it's your superior or it's someone who's supposed to be in charge or of power, but they're acting like absolute twats and doing stupid, it's just like, I remember when I worked somewhere in Wakefield, and it wasn't so ironically it wasn't like I'm trying to say it without baiting them up, but it wasn't for like, on the offset it didn't look like it was a white person production company,
right?
But when I got in there, it was very much white, a bit of white, bit of Asian,
right?
I might have just made it up now, but anyway, the guy who was like my manager or whatever, he always would be like, oh, wagwan, but he'd say it, he'd just say it like wagwan, something stupid like that, and I'm just like, hello. You all right, mate? But then he'd go on to say silly things about carnival and people get shot, or people just take drugs at carnival. And this is supposed to be my boss. But again, I didn't say anything. I just left the job feeling really rubbish. And I just kind of didn't want to go back into that type of industry. And it's sad that so many people, especially us women, feel like we can't now do what we want just because of how someone has treated us.
That's it.
But let's talk about, is it macroaggression?
Macro, it's you know, like when I think of macro, we were speaking about this, we think about on a larger scale, like obviously you got the individuals coming at you, and then you think about the institution itself, the workplace,
like the culture, the environment.
One example I had is one of the places I worked when I first got there. All I had this young Asian guy got a training contract, and the first thing I heard, he pulled the race card, you know, and all of this, and everyone was talking about it like it was gossip. And in my head, I'm like, someone high up who had to give him that position for any reason has put this is how I feel like about social media sometimes. Someone high up puts this statement out there, and then it becomes just gossip to those.
Wait, it was a high up person who said that he pulled the race card?
That's my opinion of it. Where has that come from, that he pulled the race card? And I just feel like your institution, maybe if they don't like something on the way, something's been handled just as they can, as politicians can, and everything. They put out statements and then it becomes office gossip. And as an Asian woman, to come to a new workplace in here, that somebody's pulled the race card straight away, I'm like, oh my God, like, I have to be careful about what I say. Like, what about when I'm trying to get a promotion? Like, it sets you back a little bit, like, that's not right. It set me back a little bit, but because I am a vocal person, I was, well, did he have to pull the race card? How did he feel to feel like that he was being racially discriminated against, that he had to say something about it? It's not easy to do that. And then even if he got the position because he felt like he was racially discriminated and he wanted to sue the company, then to be in that position, I couldn't even imagine how you would feel. It's like none of you are thinking about that. You're just spreading this gossip, and then that affects the whole culture, the whole floor.
Person's experience in that workplace.
So that's one example of like how I kind of see like a macroaggression that kind of affects the complete culture.
Yeah. I mean, working in a school, I think the way that I see macroaggressions at work is the way, again, looking at the environment, the culture, the way that issues of racial discrimination are dealt with, how we respond to it. Now, in a previous school, which I will not mention, I was the only black human being in that school. I mean, among both staff and student, I was the only black person. It was a working class, white, like everything. So I very much stood out. And the kids clearly noticed that. I'd walk through the corridors and I'd have people saying, Wagwan, Wakanda forever, coming up with some fake version of a Jamaican accent, or walking down the corridor. Do you know what? At first it was a shock, but then I accepted it because I had that every single day. And it's absolutely inappropriate that I did accept that, but it was so normal that I'd come in with my braids on a Monday morning, and then I'm getting "yeah man" from these little white boys telling me "yeah man" in their accent, whichever it is. And it got to a point where I just accepted it. And it's annoying because walking down that corridor, I'm not the only teacher in that corridor. So everyone has heard those boys at the top of the stairs shouting these things down the stairs. There was another incident where some boys thought that it was all right to fight with each other, and they were shouting nigger across the playground at each other. Nigger this, nigger that, nigger this. I landed on the playground, and obviously they saw me coming up into the room, into the playground, and they all like ran away. So clearly they knew what they had done. I escalated it, speaking to their head of year. This is what the boys have done. Can somebody just let them know that that's absolutely inappropriate? Oh, don't worry, miss. We'll get them to write you a letter of apology. No, don't apologise to me. Go explain to them why that is absolutely inappropriate, because even if they apologise to me, they're going to do it again to somebody else. Since I left that school, nothing was done about it. Didn't receive this letter, whether it's gathering dust somewhere. Don't even know whether those boys were approached, to let them know that it was wrong. But that same teacher was very willing to deal with matters of punctuality and attendance than to deal with any incident of racial discrimination or any kind of racism in that school. For me, that showed at a macro level what the attitude was to this problem. And that scared me, that concerned me, because clearly they know that they can do those things and get away with it. It's all right in this school. Oh, it got me, man.
Like therapy, but we're releasing it.
That's it. It was just sad though that, I was made to believe that was okay, that was normal. I had to accept that, that's just how it is in this school. At a macro level, that was a severe neglect to deal with a problem of racism in that school.
I think even with that, you can see as well though that where micro and macro overlap, because both feed off each other. These horrible gremlins that just feed off each other, where each one allows the other one to kind of maintain. If there wasn't kind of the low level microaggressions, that's what creates the macro environment. That's what allows the culture to be like, yeah, that's fine. Teachers thinking it's fine, staff thinking it's fine, students. And that's scary, because then once a macro environment's created that allows racial discrimination to persist, microaggression is just like the sprinkle the cherry on top for every time.
That's it.
So where do you stand in it?
I don't think a lot of organisations know what to do, because people don't speak up about it enough. Even though it happens, they never have to deal with it because no one says anything. If no one says anything, they're just gonna let it slide. I think we, at an old place where I used to work, we had one where a girl had used the word packy. Just grinded at me. And do you know why that grinds at me? How do you know he was from Pakistan anyway? He was Muslim. Could he be an Indian Muslim?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know he's from Pakistan?
Yeah.
I really hate it. It's the most dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, and anyway, I mean, that was reported to HR, but we didn't feel like it was dealt with in the right way because they didn't know how to deal with it. They asked oh, so, you know, what would make you feel better about the situation? I want to fired. Like, what do you mean? But you can't say that, can you? Like, what are your policies? What is it around it? And they just had apology.
It's the fact that there is no policy in place to deal with it and respond to it.
And what they had to do is apologise, and that apology contained a lot of buts and things like that. And to me, your apology doesn't mean, like, you didn't want a letter of apology. Apology doesn't mean much. I want you to really learn about what you said was wrong. Where's that coming from? Why are you saying that? Make work on yourself. We could even be friends in a year or two. You might even figure that out. And as a workplace, you need to be figuring out why you've got people around here
that think it's okay.
That think it's okay to use that sort of language, or, you know, to say anything that could possibly hurt anyone, especially when it's racism. And I think, again, that touches on the macro, like how I think they get really shocked when they have to deal with it sometimes because they don't have to deal with it as often. But I'm glad that just gonna keep, as we keep getting little cuts and wounds, we're just gonna keep giving them electric shocks, right?
That's it.
Especially during what we're doing right now, until that changes completely.
Just thinking on that with the macro and just how you both of you kind of given examples, I was trying to think at the same time. I was like, shit, have I like not been? But then I was actually thinking, it's kind of a little bit of a different example of it, and I don't even know if this would count in a way, but. So I work in academia, which is an interesting place to be in. And I will not name and shame places that I worked either. But it's interesting that a lot of the times in academia, because you have this kind of place of intellectualism and everybody thinks they're above racism and discrimination and stuff like that. It's sometimes, I think, a weird culture that persists instead, where it forces people of colour to like code switch and just like adopt the norm of what's there. So even when things do happen, and when people do make little side comments, the kind of overall kind of macro culture, like, kind of makes it feel like we're above racism here. So then there is no, so there's almost like not too many policies, because that's not the right thing, but it's like, oh, we don't need the policies because nobody's racist in academia, because that's not an issue, which then has this weird kind of way of like creating culture where you still can't
from it, basically.
And kind of the colour blindness aspect of it, which is sometimes even a different way to have a culture.
It's when they want to exempt themselves from responding to it, because we haven't had an incident. We don't need to, have that conversation. Well, how do you get to decide that?
Have the conversation to prevent the incident.
That's prevention is, better than cure. Exactly.
Yeah, prevention 100%. And at the moment, everything's reaction, because people are starting to speak up on what's going on, and you need to then put things in place to prevent it from happening again.
That's it.
And then it'd be lovely to get to a point where it's just prevention constantly, rather than having to deal with the reaction. But
and that's what calls for a culture shift, man. We need to change the culture.
You guys have been very vocal today. Do you feel like moving forward, regardless if it's macro or micro, obviously, Gabby, you already do it, but, well, actually, no, let's include you in the question. Would you, one, always bring the issue up? And two, if they didn't, so let's say you were vocal but they didn't respond, would you be willing to leave that job because of that?
Oh, yeah.
I think I've definitely left.
I'm at a place. I mean, that is the reason I have left. But I think I'm in a place now where if I leave, I will make a lot of noise on my way out so that they understand the reasons for me leaving. But before I leave, I would make a lot more noise. In that incident that I said at the school, I did kind of try to email this head of year, any updates? Have you managed to speak to the kids? By email, and it was only me and him. If that was to happen again, what I would do is CC every head leadership in that school until somebody responds, knowing full well that everybody has seen it. Should they choose to disregard that, I would continue to escalate it. And actually, there's some incidents where when we're looking at any incident of bullying, racism, discrimination, that's supposed to be reported to the Department of Education.
Right.
Now, in the event that they choose not to respond, I will make so much noise on my way out. So, yeah, I'm going to be so much more... I am being
You're going to be louder, basically.
Oh, yeah, louder. Like, no one's going to, like,
confident.
silence my voice anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, good.
I think you realise, though, isn't it, a point, like, my silence is not protecting me here?
No?
Yeah,
Me
like
being
the pennies
silenced.
finally dropped
Yeah.
for
That's it.
so many people.
That's it.
I
Yeah.
think once you start being vocal as well about what you're experiencing, it becomes much easier to be vocal about what others that may not have the
That's it.
same
Yeah.
confidence, or that, you know what, not even confidence, the energy. I can't even imagine how
it's
much
both.
energy it must take.
draining.
Like, you've got you got a mortgage to think about, kids, and now you've got to think about educating people about how to speak to you. Like, oh my God, like, and you're at work,
Yeah.
like, it's long, so
Yeah.
I know maybe if I've got a little less, like, I could speak up for that person instead, because so once you start being able to speak for yourself, you can help the others around you
That's
as
it.
well, because it's the hashtag, I'm tired. People are tired.
That's it. That's it.
People
That's
are
it.
tired, do you know what I mean? And you can see it in people's faces where they're like,
Just drained.
yeah.
And I think
Just
that's an interesting
drained.
question, though, because I think there is a lot of conversations around whose job is it?
Yeah.
Whose
Like,
responsibility
whose
is it?
responsibility? Because I think it's so important to, like, again, not be silent, like you say, and
Yeah.
like make a fuss. But I think there's just part of me that's also like, is it really my job though? Like,
Yeah.
is it really me that
Yeah.
has to be educating every single, let me make a generalization, every middle class old white man about why he can't say wagwan to me every time? Like, no, that's not my... I don't know, but it's tricky.
It
I
is.
do see why you have to speak as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching our first episode. What have you dealt with? Was it micro? Was it macro? Comment below, and we will see you next time for another episode and another deep discussion.
Make sure it sound right, boys.